Now, this podcast exists because change doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers, in moments of clarity, in questions we can no longer unask.
Welcome to The Change Effect, the podcast that helps you turn life transitions into powerful new beginnings. One story, one shift, one breakthrough at a time. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, leadership coach, and change strategist who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders break through barriers to create success on their own terms. I now work with women to step into change to create a life they love. Whether you're putting yourself at the center of your own story, redefining success, or making a power pivot in your life, career, or business, you're in the right place. Each week, we dive into conversations with trailblazers, changemakers, and everyday women experiencing the ripple effects that come from overcoming the fear and doing it anyway, providing actionable steps, practical strategies, and a whole lot of fun along the way. So if you're ready to step up and become unstoppable, buckle up and let's get started.
Happy New Year and welcome back to The Change Effect. As we move into a new year, I wanted to pause with you not to rush ahead and not to plan or optimize just yet, but to reflect. Because this past year wasn't just a year of conversations. It was a year of signals. Signals about how women are changing, how success is being redefined, and how many of us are quietly but very intentionally stepping into something new. Now, this podcast has always been about change, but not the loud, dramatic kind. It's been about the more subtle and internal kind, the kind that begins long before anything changes on the outside. And this year, those undercurrents became impossible to ignore. Now, let's take a little look back. Over the past year on The Change Effect, we explored stories that, on the surface, looked different. Women finding strength and creativity and self-expression and sharing artists' work with the world on a grand scale. Women taking the risk of disclosing personal trauma to bring greater awareness to topics like grief, divorce, and addiction. Women questioning identities they once worked so hard to earn in pursuit of greater agency and freedom. Now, these are everyday women, as well as founders, creatives, executives, and change makers pausing to ask, what do I actually want to create in my life? Now, in a world of political unrest, climate chaos, and a mental health crisis that continues to plague us as a nation, we can't help but feel the need to dig deep and recognize our own ability to make those internal shifts needed to rise above all of the external noise. But underneath every conversation, there was a common thread: evolution, and a quiet voice inside asking ourselves that important question. We talked about outgrowing definitions of success that once fit, the identity gap that appears between who you've been and who you're becoming, the quiet unraveling of old rules around how we meet life's challenges, and the courage it takes to listen when something inside you says, there's more for me to step into. Now, this podcast exists because change doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers, in moments of clarity, in questions we can no longer unask. Now, many of you following this podcast have heard me speaking in past episodes about women leaving corporate. Yes, this is a movement and an area of awareness amongst women that hits close to my heart and something I'm going to be diving into more fully in my business this year. But it's important to note this is not the only headline out there. This is just one set of circumstances that speaks to a broader awakening amongst all women. The broader and more profoundly important message here is there is an obvious shift happening culturally, and that is women who are making these decisions to reinvent their way of working are not running away from anything. They are moving more toward who they are meant to be, creating more alignment between how they live and how they work. This is evident in the quiet breakup, which is something I've mentioned in past episodes, where women are leaving the power and prestige of leadership roles within organizations to pursue work that feels more aligned and truer to who they are. Now, this has nothing to do with rejecting ambition. It's all about redefining it. Women aren't shrinking their dreams. They're expanding the container for what is possible in their lives. They're asking, what if my career supported my life, not the other way around? Or what if success felt energizing instead of draining? Or what if I trusted my own voice more than the old rules I inherited? This is a shift in desire, not just circumstance. And that shift is exactly what the Change Effect was created to explore. Over the past year, I found myself returning to one idea again and again, that change doesn't end when you step away from an old identity. It begins when you decide what comes next. And that question, what comes next, has been showing up everywhere. In my conversations with guests, in my work with women behind the scenes, and honestly in my own life. There's a new kind of space being called for right now, one that honors where you've been without asking you to stay there. A space for women who aren't starting over but starting deeper, who want strategy and spaciousness, structure and self-trust to move into a different stage in their lives. Now, you'll be hearing more about this in the months ahead, but for now, just know this: what's coming is a response to the very conversations we've been having here all along. Now, at its core, the change effect has never been about reinvention for reinvention's sake. It's about courage and clarity, about remembering that you are allowed to evolve, that the version of you who built the career or anything important in your life doesn't have to be the same version who carries it forward. This podcast exists to acknowledge and celebrate that moment when you feel the pull towards something more aligned. To remind you that change is not a failure of commitment, it's often a sign of growth. And to offer you language, perspective, and stories that make your own questions feel less daunting and more compelling. So as we start here at the beginning of a new year, I want to leave you with a few truths to carry forward. Number one, outgrowing something doesn't mean it was wrong. It means it worked until it didn't. Number two, you don't need permission to want differently. Desire is data. It is often telling you something important about what you know you deserve. Number three, your next chapter doesn't require erasing your past. It requires integrating it, using those moments to build your future. And number four, change doesn't demand certainty. It asks for honesty. Because the moment you start listening to your intuition, no matter how uncomfortable it may feel, that's when things start to happen. So, before you move on with your day, I invite you to take a few quick moments with this. You can write it down, think it through, or come back to it later. But it's a simple reflection that I call stepping into a bigger version of you. Now, you want to ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, where in my life have I outgrown the old rules, but I'm still following them? This could be in work, relationships, health, creativity, or how you define success. Number 2, what part of me is asking for more right now? Not more time, more honesty about what is going on and what could be better. And number 3, if I trusted myself just 10% more this year, what might change? One decision, one boundary, one brave conversation. Oh, and there's a 4th. Sorry, I missed it. What would it look like to design my life? Not around expectations, but around inner knowing and alignment. Now, as you contemplate these questions, remember, you don't need all the answers. You just need to listen to your own inner guidance and let it inspire your next step. And as we move into this new year, my hope is that the change effect continues to be a place where your questions are answered and your evolution is inspired, where you're reminded again and again that you're growing into a more powerful version of yourself every time you take a pause to listen to your heart and take another step toward living a life you love. We have so many wonderful guests and incredible content in store for you this coming year, and we're just getting started. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this community. Thank you for listening, and thank you for trusting yourself enough to remain open to change. And if any of this resonated, please spread the good word about the podcast to friends and family, and let's make 2026 a year to remember. That's it for now. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun.